Hello everyone, it's been quite a while since we had the reveal presentation for Stellaris Federations at PDXCon 2019 in mid-October, and since then there's been several developer diaries regarding the 2.6 Federations update. As the diaries are winding down now, and the release of the DLC seemingly being quite imminent as a result of that, I thought now would be a good time to gather all of the information into one video to give us a sense of how these ambitious new features work. The 2.6 update is being considered an overhaul, as some major fundamentals of the game are changing yet again. For ease, I've broken the update into its 5 major components, and we'll go through each one of these one by one. So to start off, we'll take things pretty easy and we'll talk about the generalized features that are being overhauled. First up is your Empire Sprawl and Administrative Capacity. Now, Empire Sprawl, for those who don't know, is a measure of the expanse of your empire. It considers how many districts, systems, and colonies you have. And when Empire Sprawl goes over your administrative capacity, you suffer penalties to technology, traditions, campaigns, and leader costs. It's a sort of hindrance mechanic to hold back empires that are expanding a bit too fast. The big change is that in 2.6, Empire Sprawl will also now take into account the amount of pops you have. It was also mentioned that going over your administrative capacity will now have more of a negative impact than it did before, but no concrete numbers on this just yet. So to help combat this, there's also now several ways to reduce your impact on Empire Sprawl. For one, you can have a species trait that can actually increase or decrease how much each pop will contribute to it. Certain traditions will also counter it, and it also varies on the type of authority you are. If you're a machine intelligence, you have double the penalty for exceeding the administrative capacity, but if you're a hive mind, you have 3/4 of the penalty for exceeding it. What this does is encourage tall playstyles for machines and expansive ones for hive minds. The real way to combat Empire Sprawl now is to improve your own administrative capacity, thus closing the gap between the two. Now in 2.6, there's a new building called the Administrative Offices, which in turn adds bureaucrat jobs. These are specialists which turn consumer goods directly into administrative capacity. Machines and hives have their own variations on this as well. Now previously, technologies and ascension perks may have increased administrative capacity, and those will now instead scale it as a percentage modifier instead. It's hard to say how this is going to impact the game overall, but it does put the power in the players' hands to invest into it if they want. But it does seem to me that this is mostly a nerf to playing tall, as a tall empire will have way less space to build administrative offices. With technologies and perks now just being percentage modifiers, it's also going to be extra hard to scale your administrative capacity if you're playing tall. Without concrete numbers, we don't know for sure though, so it's all speculative. Perhaps habitats dedicated to administrative offices could fix this issue. Next up, we'll briefly touch on origins. Origins are pre-made empire backstories that you choose when creating your species. They don't only affect your empire the way civics do, but they also affect the conditions around your empire at the start of the game, such as tying into events, spawning certain systems, and even destroying planets. Seeing as some civics are origin stories, they've been changed into origins themselves, but some of those civics were DLC only, which means now we have a nice messy list of 18 origins split across 14 DLCs. So let's pretend we're sitting in a Paradox boardroom and let's break down who gets what, shall we? So, there are just 3 origins that are free for everyone out of the 18. Number 1, Prosperous Unification. This starts you with 4 additional pops and 2 additional districts. Number 2, Galactic Doorstep. Start with a dormant gateway in your home system, which can be investigated and reactivated. Number 3, Lost Colony. Another empire with the same species as you will exist somewhere else in the galaxy. So that's it for the free ones. Now if you own the Utopia expansion, you'll also get the following 3 origins as well. Number 1, Mechanist. Start the game with 8 robot pops and the ability to build more. Number 2, Syncretic Evolution. Start the game with 12 pops, being of another species. And number 3, Tree of Life, only for hive minds, which will see you start with a powerful Tree of Life on your homeworld, which is apparently disastrous if you would somehow lose control of it. Then your colony ships are also going to be planting a sapling on new colonies. Not sure exactly what that means, but it sounds interesting. Moving on now to if you own the Synthetic Dawn story pack, you'll get just 1 origin. Resource Consolidation. This is machines only, and it makes you start with a machine world as your homeworld. Next up is if you own the Apocalypse expansion, you'll get the following 2 origins. Life Seeded, which starts you on a Gaia world, and Post-Apocalyptic, which starts you on a Tomb world. Next up is if you own the Lithoids Species Pack, you'll also get one origin, Calamitous Birth. It's Lithoid only. Start with a massive crater on your homeworld. You're also able to build meteorite colony ships which colonize planets in a more dramatic fashion. It looks actually pretty cool. It'd be awesome if you could somehow like smash meteors into other people's planets and then colonize it for yourself. But yeah, I don't know how they'd make that work, but it's just an idea, it's cool. And finally, if you own the Federations Expansion, you'll get the following 8 origins. It's interesting how that worked out. Number 1, Remnants. Start on a relic world. Number 2, Shattered Ring. Start on a Shattered Ring world. Your empire lives on the only intact section of the ancient megastructure, and it's possible to repair most other sections. That sounds awesome. Wonder where they got that idea. Number 3 is Void Dwellers. Start on a habitat above your destroyed former homeworld, and with 2 more habitats in your home system. Also sounds like an awesome idea. I don't know where they get these. Completely adapted. You'll be completely adapted to living in habitats and start with the technology to build new ones, but also you'll suffer a penalty to living on regular planets. Number 4, Scion. Start as a vassal of a fallen empire. Number 5, On the Shoulders of Giants. Investigate a series of archaeological sites related to a mysterious benefactor. Number 6, Common Ground. Start as the leader of a Galactic Union Federation and with the Federation tradition unlocked. It'll be interesting to see exactly how this start manifests itself. You know, do you have a bunch of hyperlanes already discovered? You must obviously know about another empire. Are they near you, in the same system, in a different system? We'll have to see. Number 7, Hegemon. Start as the leader of a Hegemony Federation and with the Federation tradition unlocked. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to say hegemony. I always say hegemony, which I know sounds weird, but hegemony sounds so much better than hegemony, or whatever it is. So I'll probably say it wrong throughout this video, just letting you know. Number 8, the final one, is Doomsday. Your homeworld is doomed and it'll explode after 64 years, so you need to find a new home for your species. And apparently it's actually quite difficult, there's no habitable worlds near you, so we'll have to see how that works out. And that is it for all the origins we know so far. They said there's going to be 18, but they did say that back in mid-November, so I like to think maybe 1 or 2 free ones may have popped in there since, but I wouldn't count on it. Before we get into the real big topics like Federations and the Galactic Council, we still have 2 more smaller additions being added to the game that are actually quite large. Federations will be adding a new mega structure, the Mega Shipyard, and a new Mega Construct ship called the Juggernaut. So let's start with the Mega Shipyard first. The Mega Shipyard is basically as described, a massive stationary shipyard that you build in 3 stages. Stage 1 is the framework and provides 10 shipyards with 33% ship build speed globally. Stage 2 is the core, providing you with 20 shipyards and a 66% ship build speed globally. The final stage provides 30 shipyards and 100% ship build speed globally. Every ship created from a Mega Shipyard then will start with 100 XP regardless of it being at stage 1, 2 or 3. So to start building a Mega Shipyard, you need the Mega Shipyard technology that requires Mega Engineering. That's a lot of Mega. It's pretty straightforward really. We don't really have the numbers on the costs of actually building one, but it, seems self-explanatory just like other mega structures. Next up is the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is a massive warship bigger than the Titan. It has 2 XL slots, 6 hangar slots, and 5 medium turrets. It also has access to unique aura slots to buff the fleet around it or debuff the enemy. Other than just being quite the chonky looking tank, it also has 2 built-in shipyards which allow the Juggernaut to act as a forward base, building, repairing, and upgrading ships as it moves deeper into enemy territory. To build a Juggernaut, you require citadels and battleships technologies to be researched, and you'll also need a starbase with colossal assembly yards to begin your construction. You're only ever allowed to have 1 Juggernaut empire-wide, but you can also have 1 in the Federation fleet. Next topic is diplomacy. Aside from the new Federations, the Galactic Council, the standard empire-to-empire diplomacy is also getting a bit of a revamp. The first change is that there's a new leader type in the game called Envoys. Envoys can be assigned to an empire to either improve or harm relations with them. They also can be assigned to a federation or to the Galactic Community, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So now you as a player have a direct way to improve or harm relations with other empires through diplomacy. The opinion UI has then changed somewhat, now broken into 5 brackets ranging from terrible, to tense, to neutral, to positive, and finally to excellent. Now certain diplomatic actions are actually tied to these relation brackets. So for instance, you cannot rival an empire unless you already have terrible relations. You cannot form a federation with an empire unless you have excellent relations. pacts like migrations, research, or commerce require positive relations, so keeping an eye on this stuff is just likely to be a bit more important. On top of all this, you now have 5 diplomatic stances to choose from. Diplomatic stances are policies that sort of showcase how you want others to think of you. You could be belligerent, cooperative, isolationist, expansionist, or a supremacist, and each of these kind of have their own positives and drawbacks. If you're set to being cooperative, then if you want to harm relations with someone, you'll have to pay extra influence. If you're a supremacist, then other supremacists won't like you, and so on. These stances are just policies, and they can be changed every 10 years, so it is still fairly flexible in the grand scheme of things. Lastly, you have favors. Now, for some reason, they haven't really explained clearly exactly how this works, but favors can be gained through diplomatic trades, or in some cases, random events. Favors are mostly used for the diplomatic community, but they can also be used to influence the AI's likelihood of accepting diplomatic agreements. And that's essentially it for the diplomacy side of things. There's also some UI quality of life features that look quite nice, and also allow you to filter by favors that you owe in the contact screen and stuff like that. Let's move next to the truly expanded area of diplomacy, the Federation. Federations, being the namesake of the DLC, are probably the biggest area of interest for most people, as is the Council, and rightly so, as there's a lot packed into a Federation now. So there's 5 types of Federation now, so I'll list each one and their basic functionality. Number 1, a Galactic Union. This is a generic Federation that fits most empires, it's kind of the default. Its diversity of ethics amongst its members has less of a negative on cohesion. More on cohesion later. Number 2, a trade league. This federation gets access to a new powerful trade policy which combines all the other trade policies into one. To form it, it's going to require that empires are either a megacorp or have the merchant guild's civic. Number 3, a research cooperative. This federation works towards achieving technological mastery. To form, empires need to be some sort of materialist. Number 4, a martial alliance. This federation is focused on having a large and powerful federation fleet. To form, empires need to be some form of militarist. Number 5, a hegemony. Built around one strong member. The president gets most of the bonuses here, but there's also significant bonuses for its members. It can go to war to actually force others into the hegemony, and it requires you to be authoritarian to form. Each of these federations has a unique and generalized passive effect, and they can also unlock perks as they level up. And there's 5 levels to progress through, so each level typically has 2 perks for all members and 1 for the president. But the hegemony flips this and has 2 for the president and 1 for all members. Now you can change your federation type, so from a galactic union to a hegemony, let's say, but it does reset that leveling up progress of the federation. Okay, so how do you level up a federation? Well, things can get a little bit complicated here. There's going to be a lot of terminology being thrown around, new names for things that you might not have heard, and a lot of concepts that are different for Stellaris, so we'll just take things kind of slow here. So you level up by having positive cohesion. Now cohesion ranges from -100 to +100, and it can fall down due to diverse ethics within the Federation and due to the amount of members within it. So what does diverse ethics means? It just means having different ethics. Now if you have straight up opposing ethics, it'll fall even faster, but diverse ethics means they're just different. If it falls to -100, your federation will lower a level, and you'll lose the perks that you earned. Now to increase cohesion, you assign envoys to the federation, and they help raise cohesion each month. Now when you reach 100 cohesion, you then gain 10 XP each month, and after a certain amount of XP, your federation will then level up. And this leveling up gives you access to the new perks, but it also gives you access to the centralization law. So, centralization is a law that has 5 settings: minimal, low, medium, high, and very high. Each setting is locked behind the level of the federation. So level 1 is for minimal, level 2 is for low, level 3 is for medium, level 4 is for high, and level 5 is for very high. But you have to manually set it. So if you want very high centralization, you need to be a level 5 federation, and then you have to activate it. So what does centralization do? Well, it allows you to pick from more options when it comes to all of the Federation's other laws. Federation laws are basically the instructions by which federations operate, such as how much fleet contribution each member gives, the length at which the president rules, how the next president is chosen, who can join, how they declare war, and how you kick members, and a bunch of other things like that. Right, so this is really quite messy to be honest, but here's an example of what you'd need to do to set the Federation's law for fleet contribution to medium. You'd first need to get your Federation level to 3, this would then allow you to enact the law for centralization to be medium, and that would then allow you to enact the law for fleet contribution to medium. So why is there this middle step? Why aren't laws just tied to the Federation level directly? Why do you also have to enable a centralization law? Well, it seems that centralization is a sort of hindrance mechanic. The higher you set it, the more you lose cohesion, which if you remember, means your Federation will start to de-level. So you need more and more envoys to offset it. Now from a design perspective, it does seem a little bit messy way to keep the Federation in check. I'm not sure why cohesion doesn't just fall as you level up, but I guess they want you to be able to have your perks from the level, but also then have laws separated out into something that you need to invest more envoys to get. So let's go over it with another example really quick from the start. If we scroll down, we can see that we have a law to decide how we kick members from the Federation. It's normally on a majority vote, but we can put it on the president decides, so that the president doesn't have to consult anyone if they want to kick a member. So I guess it's quite powerful for the president. So to do this, we need to raise our Federation level to 5. This means assigning envoys to the Federation, which will battle any diverse ethics and member count, that drags our cohesion down. Once we reach 100 cohesion, we'll gain XP every month. Once we level up, we'll start the process again until we get to level 5. Now once we get to level 5, we can then enact the centralization law to very high. This will make cohesion fall, but with more envoys we can battle it. Now we can change the law to make it so that the president decides who gets kicked out. So it's just a lot of steps, but doing that and reaching both level 5 and very high centralization means you can pretty much enact any law. Now what happens if we enable a level 5 law and then our Federation loses a level because we couldn't sustain the cohesion malice? I don't know, maybe the law reverts to default, or maybe it just gets stuck and stays at what it is. So hopefully I explained that as clearly as possible. It is a bit messy just because there's so many new things and terms to wrap your head around, but hopefully I laid it out so that, it makes as much sense as possible. Okay, so the last topic to cover is another big one, and that's the Galactic Community. Now, the Galactic Community is a sort of United Nations in space, where all members can propose and vote on resolutions, which are laws that will then affect all the empires within the Galactic Community. So let's start off basic. How do you join or form the Galactic Community? Well, when an empire that is non-gestalt or non-genocidal has discovered over half the empires in the galaxy, an event will trigger to suggest forming the Galactic Community. Now when it's formed, all the empires that had contact with that empire that formed it can now choose to join it or not. If at some point later you wish to leave, you can do so by paying a sum of influence that scales with the size of your empire, so you're not locked in. So the way the Galactic Community works is that you have resolutions, which are laws that will have some benefits and drawbacks affecting everyone. Each empire can propose one resolution at a time, and when they do, it enters a proposal queue. Now the queue is ordered by how much diplomatic weight is supporting a resolution. Now before we continue, diplomatic weight is essentially how influential an empire is within the Galactic Community. Fleet power, POPs, economy, and technology are all measured up to see who has the most diplomatic weight. For sake of argument, it's basically your fleet power, your POPs, your economy, and your technology, which are all kind of measured up to see who has the most diplomatic weight. Certain resolutions can actually be passed to vary these weights though, so maybe your fleet power wouldn't actually count for that much, or maybe your tech wouldn't count for that much. This allows you to make yourself more influential on the diplomatic stage compared to others, if you can get the weight to favor your strengths. So let's say for an example, there's an empire with a massive fleet swinging its big dick around the Galactic Community, and you don't want them to have, with their big fleet, to really have much say. If you and the others can kind of pass some resolutions to lower the amount that fleet power contributes to diplomatic weight, maybe then if you had high technology or a good economy or whatever, you'd then be counting for more against them. So back to the proposal queue. Now as mentioned, based on diplomatic weight, that's where it's going to be placed in the priority queue. Then when it's time for a vote, the Senate is in session and will begin voting on the proposal, and this will take place over 1800 days. Now over those 1800 days, empires can choose to either support, oppose, or abstain from the resolution. Now supporting or opposing will add their own diplomatic weight to either side of the vote, but it does also incur an opinion bonus or penalty with the empire proposing the resolution. So if you don't want to upset anyone, maybe that's why you should just abstain. Another thing you can do is call in favors. Now, we mentioned favors earlier, and apparently how you can earn favors with other empires by, quote, doing diplomatic trades. Not fully sure what that entails, but I'm guessing that if you offer maybe 5,000 energy and they accept the gift, maybe you get a favor? I'm not really too sure, we'll have to see. Either way, you can acquire up to 10 favors with an empire, and then you can call them in for influence during a voting process. Now, each favor is going to add 10% of their diplomatic weight to your decision. So if you get to call in all 10 favors, you get 100% of the empire's diplomatic weight behind your decision. Now, still no word again on if they're directly opposing you, can you call in the favors? And does it lower their own diplomatic weight? I don't think we have an answer for that. But like I said, this favors mechanic is just something they really haven't shown very clearly, so apologies for that. Now, after those 1800 days of voting, the diplomatic weight on either side is just counted and the resolution is either passed or removed. The Senate is then in recess for 720 days until it picks up the next resolution from the priority queue. So what does all this really mean? Well, it means that essentially there is now this galactic group that if you join them, you may end up getting more buffs than debuffs, or you may end up getting more debuffs than buffs. If you leave the group and fewer people are in it, then they can probably manipulate it more easily to get stronger buffs for themselves. So you want to at least attempt to throw your hat into the ring, if not to help yourself, but at least to stop others from getting too strong. Now, it's worth seeing what can be actually affected with resolutions. From what we know, there are 5 categories of resolutions covering commerce and industry, politics and culture, environment and technology, defense and war, and then galactic priorities. They then all have subcategories, and in each of those there's 5 resolutions that vary between minor things and extreme effects. You have to work your way up to the extreme effects, which means passing the variations of that resolution 5 times successfully. This gives you a chance to see the direction things are headed, so you don't get a massive shock to your economy. You can sort of see like, oh, this got a vote one time, now it's getting another vote, which is making it more extreme, now it's getting another vote, which is making it more extreme, and you're like, this is really hurting me, and you gotta like kind of work at taking it down a notch. Now, some resolutions are actually classed as sanctions, which impose things on a specific empire or on everyone, and if they breach their sanctions, they break galactic law. An example given is if the Environmental Control Board has been passed, it's then illegal to terraform a world into anything but a Gaia planet. Another resolution, the Reverence for Life, makes it illegal to use world crackers. Violating galactic law will then mean you get a big negative opinion modifier with everyone in the galactic community, but not much else. Now, they did say if things do get bad enough, you may get a resolution passed against you that denounces you, which allows others to gain an animosity CB and go to war with you. And that's sort of it for the galactic community in a nutshell, but there's one last thing. It is possible to reform the galactic community to include a galactic council. The council will be made up by 3 empires with the highest diplomatic weight, and they get special powers to veto resolutions and use emergency measures. Council members can then force the Senate into session for an emergency between recesses, and this could be things for like an endgame crisis or AI rebellions. It's also possible for the council to raise and lower its number of members. Eventually you could have just one, giving you veto power over the galactic community, effectively becoming the Senate. Now, it's worth mentioning as well that if you're not in the galactic community, then you are not affected by its resolutions. Empires might not like you, and if the galactic community is radical enough, they might even list you as a pre-threat to the galaxy, so it's probably worth seeing what they're up to. No word yet if you can actually see what resolutions have been passed before you're a part of it. It maybe would be kind of nice knowing that information before joining it. Another benefit is that the galactic market is now embedded in the galactic community, so you don't have access to the galactic market at least. You can still use the internal one unless you're part of the galactic community. And that's it for all the major features of Stellaris 2.6 Federations update. It is quite the overhaul. Now, how much of these features are DLC and how much are going to be just part of the base game? It's really tough to say, and honestly I don't even think they know. They redesign their stuff so often, they go back to old DLCs, they take stuff out of them, they put stuff into them. There's no real clear vision, and they tend to circle the drain and go around the same problems over and over, and they've switched directors now 3 times. Now, our current director, Grekulf, or Daniel Modegaard, has been in charge for quite a while, and I think he's starting to right the ship, as they've acknowledged the several performance issues and the protracted patching cycles and everything that's gone on since Megacorp. So hopefully now this is one of the reasons for such a long time from announcement to release, and they've since place team members solely on improving AI and performance. Now, I for one have had my trust and confidence just a little bit shook with Stellaris, if I'm being honest, and I believe these massive overhauls really should just have some sort of beta period. I mean, that would kind of solve a lot of things, but it wouldn't really make much financial sense to give out your content early if it's not that good. Hopefully the team seem to understand that they really need to get this one right and have it go as smoothly as possible, so I'm wishing them all the best more than anything. Anyways, that is it for the video. Let me know what you think of the ideas in Federations in the comments below. No doubt it will serve Paradox well if they stumble onto this video to see some of the feedback that isn't just coming from their own forums. I for one think it looks quite interesting, but I do fear it is really ambitious. There is a lot of systems, a lot of new mechanics, and it's all heavily dependent on how the AI is going to handle it. You know, if there's not good AI, you can just game the crap out of this whole galactic community and the diplomacy stuff, so it really depends on the AI being significantly improved. Not just slightly improved, but really having an overhaul of its own. So we'll have to see how that goes. Now for multiplayer, I just cannot see how this won't be just gamed to F. I basically foresee a bunch of tech federations starting early, building all their way up, and then switching into hegemonies and just like wrecking the galaxy. People in Discord just kind of like manipulating how the galactic community works, rushing the best resolutions they can. You know, I just don't see it being very interesting actually for multiplayer. Hopefully I'm way off with that, but that's just the way I see it going. Anyways, in the meantime, if you like this kind of content, you want to support it further, liking the video does help a lot. Appreciate that. Alright, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.